It's estimated that the global fashion industry accounts for 10% of the world's carbon emissions. Production, manufacturing and transportation of the millions of garments purchased each year have been cited as some of the causes. On top of this, synthetic fibres such as polyester, acrylic and nylon, which are used in the majority of our clothes, are made from fossil fuel, making production much more energy intensive than with natural fibres. Polyester alone is estimated to use around 70 million barrels of oil each year.
70 million, crikey. Add to that the fast fashion trend that we've seen in recent years. It's reported that 85% of all textiles go to the dump each year.
85%?
Yeah.
But there are things that both manufacturers and consumers can do to reduce the impact that our wardrobes have on the climate. We are joined by three guests: Helen Lax of Fashion District, Rory Hugel from Fashion for Good, and Nick Ryan, Head of Innovation from Worn Again Technologies, to discuss what they're doing to help combat these issues and challenges within the fashion industry faces. So first, to join us is Helen Lax.
Hello, both of you. Now, Bobby, I see that fashion is at your heart, as you said a bit earlier. And did you know that your outfit today, tops, are dead on trend?
Oh, that's exactly what I was going for. Exactly what I was going for.
Dead on trend, get you.
They're dead on trend. Lots of new emerging fashion designers in East London are absolutely reinventing the tank top.
That's why I'm from East London. It's all planned. It's all planned. Thank you, Helen. So having seen the statistics, Helen, this is a big problem that the fashion industry is facing. Is change really gathering pace?
Yep, it's no doubt. Change is gathering pace in the fashion industry to tackle all those issues that we've got with sustainability and protecting our planet, really. And some of that, I think, is because the customers are driving that. The customers really care now where their clothes come from, how they're made, who is making them, in what situation, and what they're made of. And this is very much driving brands and the industry to think through their own supply chains and the traceability of a garment. It really matters to people. And obviously, in the end, fashion is a business, so they have to take notice of that. The pandemic has most definitely brought on a new movement, a new thinking. That's also changing the patterns in the fashion industry. So things like, is it important anymore to wear seasonal things? Or can you get from your wardrobe stuff from winter, layer it with stuff from spring onto summer? Does it actually matter if you have to, change over your seasons each year? So people are buying less and buying things, fewer things, but maybe slightly more expensive things so that they last longer.
With all of these changes, Helen, what do you see the future of Fashion District looking like?
Well, Fashion District, I guess the two main things are our two main jobs. The first one is pushing on the innovation, thinking about the future, thinking about how the fashion industry can respond to protecting our planet. And all along the value chain, the supply chain, what can our manufacturers, our designers, our retailers be doing to ensure that we are embedding those important values within the value chain? And so Fashion District is very much looking for, I suppose, technologists, engineers to join us in this fight and help us think through and bring forward new solutions that can be invested in and can scale up.
Thank you, Helen. So let's come to you, Rory. You work with partners such as Levi's, Adidas, Chanel, and Stella McCartney. How are Fashion for Good helping new startups in the industry to think with sustainability at the forefront of their business?
Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks very much for having me. I'd say there's four main ways in which we're trying to do that. The first of which is very important to Fashion for Good, is collaboration. So we bring together all of the likes of those brand partners that you mentioned in a pre-competitive space. And what that enables us to do is create an atmosphere where people are sharing learnings and really driving the industry forward on an industry-wide level rather than kind of in silos. Secondly, we run pilot projects with the startups that we work with and the brand partners. And this is really important because it helps to validate the technology and demonstrate that these new innovations do work, and it kind of takes it from PowerPoint to practice, which is very important when demonstrating new technologies. And then finally, we also offer financing to these startups, which, as we know, there's a huge amount of financing that's required to bring these startups to scale and really have a kind of widespread impact. So Fashion for Good and the partners that we work with help to provide investment opportunities to those startups.
Excellent. And to you, Nick, as a relatively new startup, how are you adapting?
Well, I guess we're not so much adapting as a startup. We're actually developing for the future. Our ambition when we started off was to look at the real life problem or the real world problem of end of life textiles in all its magnificent mix. You get all sorts of different combinations of textiles and mixed fibers and things. And we started looking at our technology as a recycling technology to deal with that real world problem. And what we've come up with is what we believe is a relatively unique approach to this, which is using solvation chemistry, which is the use of clever solvents and clever solvent systems to isolate and extract those materials that we want to actually bring back into the supply chains.
Well, it's great to hear so much positivity and drive amongst you.
Yeah.
Helen, if I can come back to you. Nick touched on perhaps exploring new solutions for production processes or end-of-life treatments. How can the broader industry support the scale-up of new solutions and really influence the mainstream production?
Well, if we really want to make a difference, it's the big brands, the big retailers that need to be pumping these new innovations out. So whilst we can support startups and we can get them to a certain stage, we need collaboration in the industry between those big players and the startups so that they nurture them themselves and we get a better pipeline of startups into the mainstream. In the end, what we need is a system, a global system, not just a countrywide system, that will absolutely address those issues of supply chain, whether it's about shipping, whether it's about packaging, distribution, whatever it is, or new materials. We've got to get more collaboration to actually solve those issues. And Nick was talking about real life issues.
And Rory, I know this is something you're really passionate about, isn't it? But how do you turn passion into reality and to make that difference?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. It's really about actually testing these technologies in the markets and bringing all of the necessary stakeholders together. So, that's working with brands, innovators, but also manufacturers and other supply chain partners to really kind of work through the very challenging issues, especially regarding, for example, end of life, bringing together all of those stakeholders to understand what needs to be done in order to scale this technology and sharing the learnings between those different stakeholders. So that's where I think collaboration is really key and bringing all of those stakeholders around the same table to work on these pilot projects together.
Thank you. So this one is really to all of you, but we'll start with you, Nick. What areas in fashion production are the most important to tackle? And are you noticing any particular themes at present?
I mean, the themes of sustainability are absolutely shot through in the whole of the fashion industry. I mean, we started in 2011. We were not a lone voice in the fashion industry at the time, talking about the need for real life solutions to end of life textiles. I think the key themes now are that those recycling technologies that will come along, that will make it, have to be linked to commercial reality. We're not going to change the whole world, the whole supply chain of fashion. So what we need to do is make sure that we're not doing it in a vacuum. Helen mentioned early on, we need to make sure that we're doing it in partnership with all the big players, and we need it to be a commercially viable solution for it to be adopted and therefore do the things that it needs to do.
Thanks, Nick. And if we come to you next, Helen, ask you the same question. Do you feel the same as Nick?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a hard question, what's the most important thing to tackle? But I mean, for me, I think probably it would be new materials.
Okay.
And that's because we look over the fence and think about the future and we solve the issue of how what materials we are using, then it could be that people like Nick further down the line have an easier job. So investing in new materials, especially biomaterials. The interesting thing is that sometimes when you have a new solution, you have to remember that you can't bring in a new solution that will actually give you as many issues as the one you've just got rid of. New biomaterials are really important.
Thank you. And last but not least, Rory, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I think both the previous participants have summed it up very well, and definitely agree with Helen that the whole supply chain is rife for innovation and disruption, because there's a huge impact across the whole supply chain. And you can look at carbon emissions very upstream with raw materials, and there's significant changes needed there. And then water usage in dyeing processes at the moment. So, it's very hard to pinpoint one, but I would say that the whole supply chain, really, the most upstream parts, are rife for innovation, which is very exciting for us. And we're seeing a fantastic pipeline of innovators working to overcome those challenges.
Well, exciting times ahead. Well, I, for one, will be taking a lot more interest now in how I can reduce sort of the impact I make with the choices. I love my clothes.
I love your clothes. Helen loves your clothes.
Helen, thank you.
Everybody loves your clothes.
Yours too. But finding the more sustainable options will be making me look harder from now on. It's all about every one of us doing our bit.